Today is a very special show. Today is our 100th episode of Next Steps Forward. I want to thank you, our listeners and viewers, for tuning in and getting us here. Just 2 days after the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks that claimed nearly 3,000 American lives, our guests today are U.S. Army veteran Saul Martinez and retired Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Bryce Cherryholmes. Saul is a Southern California native, former Army infantryman, and Purple Heart recipient. He enlisted in 2006.
Are you there?
We're back.
I apologize. I did not put on.
All right, we're
You're good.
live, Bryce.
You're good. I'm sorry.
It's all good. So Saul enlisted in 2006. He lost both legs and suffered a traumatic brain injury in May
Go ahead.
2007.
I had a phone call, so I'm going to put it on Do Not Disturb. I apologize.
Let's do this again, Saul. Third introduction for you. Get a lot of airtime today. In May 2007, when his vehicle was hit by a projectile improvised explosive device in Iraq. After leaving the military, Saul Martinez moved his family to Montana and graduated from Montana State University. In 2017, former President George W. Bush painted his portrait for his collection and book, Portraits of Courage, which include a series of paintings to bring visibility to our nation's service members and their stories. Saul Martinez is the Chief Program Officer of the Warriors and Quiet Waters Foundation, and he continues to serve as an active advocate for wounded and injured veterans and their welfare. Bryce Cherryholmes was born in 1988 in Fort Worth, Texas. And Bryce, for the record, that really burns me because that's the year I graduated high school. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 2007 and served faithfully for 8 years until his retirement from active duty in 2015. He earned 3 Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals and the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal. Bryce sustained an initial back injury during his first combat deployment. It was an injury that became worse over time, eventually resulting in surgery and paralysis from the chest down. Bryce lives in North Carolina with his wife of 11 years, Kaylin, and their 2 children, Brylan and Case. He currently serves as an ambassador for the national veteran-focused nonprofit SoldierStrong. Saul Martinez and Bryce Cherryholmes, welcome to Next Steps Forward.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for having us, Chris. It's an honor to be here for your 100th show.
No, the honor is mine.
Absolutely.
I'm proud to call both of you brothers, and so it truly is an honor for me to have you here.
Well, I would be a much younger brother than since the whole high school thing.
Yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Kicking the gut.
Had to.
So Sunday was the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. What does 9/11 mean to each of you, and how did it change your lives?
So I'm gonna let you go first, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Thanks so much, Chris. And I know a little bit of what 9/11 means to you, but with what 9/11 means to me, it was a big time pivot point in my life. It was a seed that was planted. It was everything. I was a junior in high school when the towers were hit, and before that, it was a growing sense of, not only pride in our country, but growing up the way I did and everything that my family was doing and how they were trying to thrive, and everything that this country does for Americans, for everybody else. It was a growing sense of pride, and it got to the point where it's like, I want to protect this. I want to do something to protect this. And then 9/11 happened. And from that point on, it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And so 9/11 means so much to me, just because of how big of a role not only did it play in my life, but in everybody's life that was affected that day. And I still think back to it like it was yesterday, like most of us do. I know exactly where I was. I remember the smells. I remember how I felt. I actually remember what I was wearing. And it's very few moments in life that, stick out that way. And, it's just, tragedy is big that way, and it sticks with you, but it also fuels me. I'm a big, I will never forget. I will never forget that day, nor will I ever forget anybody that was lost on that day, nor anybody that served on that day. That's what 9/11 means to me.
Thank you. Bryce?
Absolutely. Just to reiterate exactly what Saul said, I remember exactly where I was. It's good to hear that he was only a junior in high school, because I was in 8th grade. when the towers hit, and I remember them turning the news on, and I remember, exactly like you said, the sound, smells, everything. I remember what I was wearing. I remember what the teachers were wearing. I remember the crazy things about it. It's one of those once in a lifetime moments that you just don't forget. And I remember the sense of pride I had even in 8th grade, trying to look at the world as a whole and saying, hey, wait a second, I see I see everyone in the country banding together. Didn't matter race, religion, color, nothing. We all banded together at that moment, and that was something that has stuck with me for the rest of my life because of that. So 9/11 was definitely a defining moment in my life, as towards the military aspect as well, because that was really the time where I was like, I need to help. How can I help? What's the best way for me to do it? So that's what it would mean to me.
You both touched on how America banded together, and that just reminded me of, there's a small museum a town over from me. And about 5 or 6 years ago, they had a display on during the month of September, where there are portraits from across the entire country of how people painted things, the American flag. It was a barn, it was the side of their house, it was their roof, it was their tractor trailer. And that's, as terrible as that was, that's one of the positive things I think to come from that day from a unification perspective. So 9/11, it happened 5 years before you enlisted, and Bryce, it was 7 years before you joined the Marines. You both talked about a sense of pride there a moment ago. Why did each of you choose military service, and what were your expectations when you signed those papers and took your oaths to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and obey the orders of the President of the United States?
For me, it was, man, yeah. So it was 5 years after. So I was out of high school for, I was out of high school for right at 3 years. And it was at that point I wanted to join right after high school, like as soon as I graduated, but I was overcome by events and honestly a little bit of pushback from my family, which is, I've talked to them about that. And having, I had to kind of dismiss my this crazy good, like big feeling to join the military, in order to, just go about life, in Southern California. And I had, I had a couple of different jobs, and it was just, the next day was the same as the last. And that sense of service never went away. Never. Every single day I thought about it like, oh, you know what, today should be the day I join, or maybe I'll go next week or next month. And then slowly that became, okay, maybe someday. And when it came down to it, in 2006, it was right after my 21st birthday, and that big feeling hit again. It was like a thunderstruck moment where it was like, no, it's time. I've watched the news, I've seen what's going on in Afghanistan and Iraq, or about to go on in Iraq at that point, when I was graduating high school. So I watched the progression of the invasion and all of that, and it never went away. So 2006 came about, and I said, it's time. It's finally time. So I answered that call because I felt like that's where I was meant to be. And the reason why I chose military service is because it might sound a little silly, but I wanted to fight the bad guys. I wanted to get some, a little bit of restitution for not only 9/11, but everything else with the global war on terror. It was like, that's where I felt like I needed to be. And, in a naive sense, I thought, all right, I'm a wrestler, I'm a football player, I'm a swimmer, I'm all these things, and I'm okay at these things, and maybe I can utilize those in my military service. Man, it wasn't until a lot later that I realized, okay, I could take some of those skills and apply them, but otherwise, I'm in the military and I'm going to get resocialized. And I did. And, that's something hardly anybody ever talks about, is the resocialization aspect. And so that's why I chose military service, because it was not only a direct line to try to fight the bad guys, but it was all the other things, like being part of a team again, like being in the, like all of us standing on the same arrow, going in the same direction. And being able to fulfill that sense of not only purpose, but also pride and service to our country. That's why I chose military.
Bryce?
Yeah. No, I mean, I reiterate everything you just said, Saul. I mean, the exact same thing for me. I mean, I joined in July. Let me think. July, I think it was 23rd, 2007. So, just before the 6-year anniversary, I believe, and graduated boot camp October 19th. The biggest reason why I joined was during that time in my life, I didn't have anything really giving me a drive or a push. Everything kind of came easy, and I was just one day after the next, same thing. And in 2006, I lost my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and she, before she passed, she said, I want you to join the military. You really should. You should make a career out of it. And I'd wanted to be a Marine since almost can remember the exact date because it was my birthday when I turned 9, and I got a book about him. But it was like, okay, well, grandma wanted me to do this. I'm gonna make sure this happens. So, oddly enough, though, like, I went to the Army first. Nothing against them. Saul, it's the same fight, different uniform, right? I don't wear the mint chocolate chip cookies though. Those camis. But after that, I went to the Coast Guard, right? And had some medical things going on because of my ADHD. So I had a lot of paperwork I had to get. But then from Coast Guard, went to the Navy. Navy was like, nope, you didn't give us all the documents. And then randomly, I met a Marine while I was working at my security job and security guard job. And he was like, call this guy, and gave this guy a call. And I was gone. I mean, at boot camp within 2 weeks. And funny enough, you mentioned Chris. My wife and I have been married since November 26, 2009. And she, I called her that night, the day I was leaving, and I said, "Hey, I'm joining the Marine Corps." She's like, "Why would you do a stupid thing like that?" And I said, "Just to make a better life for you and our future family." We weren't dating at the time, nothing, right? Like, we were just really good friends, and that's what she said. So, but back to, what it means to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, and obey the orders of the President of the United States and all officers appointed over us, right? Like, that right there wasn't as challenging, honestly, as I thought it would be. When I first heard that, I was, okay, so I just got to shut up and color. It's not hard to do. As a Marine, it's a little more difficult than Saul because we eat crayons. So I had to use, the marker. So I didn't eat my writing material, but that's kind of what it all meant to me. That's how it all played out.
And Bryce, you had multiple deployments. How'd you end up being deployed multiple times?
That's a pretty simple and easy question to answer, honestly. The first deployment to Iraq, I deployed August 11, 2008, and I volunteered for that deployment. And went to Iraq, and then it came time to, hey, either go home or, request to stay and stay for longer. Like the Army does normally, correct me if I'm wrong, Saul, it's normally about 9 to 12 month deployments, right? Typically.
Yeah. Typically. Mm-hmm.
And in the Marine Corps, it's usually about a 6 to 8 month deployment, depending on your unit. So mine was supposed to be a 6 month, and I decided I was going to stay longer. And when I decided to stay longer, I got moved to a different job because the job I was filling at the time was going to be filled with other individuals that were already coming in. So they kind of just put you where they want you. But because I stayed later, though, is how I sustained my initial injury and then follow on injuries after that. And then I got back August 13th, 2009, and wife and I got married. It was the best day of my life, besides when my kids were born. And it was funny because we had our wedding planned for May 21st of 2010. Everything paid for, whole 9 yards. And Marine Corps said, nope. You gotta, Saul, I'm sure you're familiar with this. Like, Army's probably the same way, I think, where it's like, no, if you're not married, you got to live in the barracks. And you're like, well, how do I know what my pet peeves are? I know what mine are, but like, how do I know what hers are? Are we even going to get along? Like, there's your attrition rate, right, for divorce in the military. Just saying. So hopefully some maybe some general officers are going to listen to this and make some changes. But I told him I didn't want BAH. I didn't care. I could afford it on my own. We lived out in town, whatever. But it was comical to me because I got by name requested in 2010 to leave on another deployment down to Central and South America to do humanitarian aid, and I accepted it, and knowing that I was leaving a month after I was getting married, after our wedding. And I initially told my wife, I couldn't do anything about it. I have to go. It was about like a year later when I finally was like, yeah, I actually had a choice, but you know, I wanted to deploy. It's good for promotions. It's good for military service, good for experience. And got back from that deployment in November 2010 and PCS in so permanent change of station. I changed from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, where I'm currently located at, to Camp Pendleton, California. And 2012 came up. I was working at 1st Marine Division headquarters, G4 at the staff. And I got asked again, hey, do you want to deploy? My wife was pregnant at the time with our daughter. And they said, you don't have to. You know, you have a daughter on the way, you can stay here. And I was like, nah, she'll be born beforehand. We're good. Like, I'll get to see her for a little bit. All's good. And so yeah, I left when she was 3 months old in 2012. She was born in October, and I left in January of 2012. I left, she could fit, you know, head and butt on my elbow. I went to Afghanistan and ended up being I guess you could say I ended up being pretty important to the staff that was there at the time. But yeah, I went there and they asked me to stay longer also on that one. And I said, yeah, absolutely. But I got told no by the now Commandant of the Marine Corps. So it was all right. It was a good time. That's how I ended up getting deployed multiple times. I just kept saying yes.
Call you a Hurt Locker from now on.
Right.
So, well, you weren't in the Army long before being deployed to Iraq, but that would make sense for an infantryman when the country was in the midst of a pretty hot war. Take us through how you're being trained and mentally prepared in the US for combat and what your time in Iraq was like up to the day you were injured.
Sure, no problem. You know, that short story actually starts in basic and in basic training. At that time, when I first enlisted in 2006, you know, IEDs were crazy on the rise, and up until that point, I mean, it was actually a pretty steep trajectory in an upward motion of not only the frequency of IED attacks, but also the type of IEDs. They were getting more advanced. They were getting, and by advanced, I mean they were getting, their tactics were getting a little more complex because the enemies that were around, they were watching us, or they were watching U.S. service members and they were watching units move. They were watching even, brigade size elements come in and out of country. They were watching everything, and they were very quick to adapt. One example of that. So, or actually, I'll get to that. But in basic, that was probably the main source of training was IED, 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 and everything that comes with IEDs is how to react to IEDs, how to spot IEDs, how to identify, an area where IEDs could be, like danger areas, along with all the regular infantryman stuff, small unit maneuvering, a small unit tactics, clearing houses, all that good stuff. But a big focus was IEDs. And then that carried on after basic, once I got to my unit, which it was just more of the same, just constant briefings and constant trainings on IEDs. And then that continued all the way into getting to country. So when I deployed to Iraq in March of 2007, it was again a lot of the same, more training, obviously more movement tactics, and more more unit-based, functions. But once we got to country, then we got the most up-to-date information. And we had heard a little bit about EFPs before we got to country, but once we got there, that's all it was about. And that was because of the region of Iraq that we were in, which is about, 18 miles southeast of Baghdad, which is territory. And EFPs are explosively formed penetrators or projectiles, depending on who you ask. But what EFPs are essentially a cylinder packed with explosives and capped with a detonator on one side, and then the other side is capped with a copper plate, and that copper plate is bowled. And when it detonates, that copper plate turns into a giant hot bullet that shreds through anything. And when I mean through anything, it shred through our 400-pound Humvee doors like nothing, and it actually blew 2 of them off. But I'll get to that as well. So EFPs, they can be arranged in a lot of different ways, but the main mode and the one that was most effective was they camouflage them. They set them, anywhere from 1 charge to, I think the biggest array we found was when we were in country was like 8 to 10 charges, 8 to 10 of those cylinders, and they vary in diameter as well. Obviously the larger the diameter, the bigger the bullet. And when we were there, that was the main point of training was IEDs and IED awareness. And then to, everything about being mentally prepared, I think that goes back to now in hindsight, I think that goes back to most anything. Like when we practice, we can't lose. And when we practice, it's just like another repetition. And I don't know if there's any Kobe fans around, but Kobe used to say, if I'm in a championship game, it's just another time that I'm doing something that I did thousands of times before. And for us, it was a lot of the same. It was going out on a mission. And I was on my brigade commander's command security detachment, but it was going out on a mission, and it was like, okay, we know what to expect. We know what to look for. We know how to react. And that was helpful. So I think people sometimes lose that distinction between being mentally prepared and practice. To me, they're pretty similar. To me, when people practice, I don't know if they actually realize that they are mentally preparing, or if they're just saying, oh, I got to practice this move so I could get my motor skill, my motor functions, and my fine tuning down. Like to me, they're very similar. To me, they're the similar species. And so that's what it was like being mentally prepared. Now, during the time in Iraq, it was just repetition. Our team, again, being on my brigade commander's command security detachment, it was day in and day out of the same thing. The colonel had to go places. We had to get him there, and we had to get him there safely. And every day it was somewhere different. And that actually spoke to, his leadership at the time. Was he needed to be with his units. He needed to go see his battalion commanders. He needed to go see even his, platoon size elements that were out on cops. Like it was a thing. He wanted to be around and go all around the AO the area of operation in order to see what was going on, make sure his soldiers were being taken care of, and make sure he can take care of them if there was something he could do to take care of them. So it was repetition each day, every day, and our teams were pretty tight. And yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of what it was like training leading up to, and also, you know, being mentally prepared for while we were there. Repetition and practice.
So would you share what you remember and what you're comfortable sharing about the day you were injured and the days and weeks immediately after?
Sure. And I'll try to keep it a little short, but on May 8th, 2007, it was, you know, going back to EFPs. We were about 20 minutes into the mission that day, and boom. Yeah, the after the investigation, the charge that hit, or the IED that hit us, they estimate it was anywhere between 6 to 8 charges of EFPs in that one array. And before I talk about like the actual, you know, impact or the detonation, it's the main mode, the most effective mode of EFP strikes is encasing them in, you know that spray foam that you use for installation or insulation. So the main mode was putting all of these charges in spray foam and then shaping it in a way that it looks like a rock. And then once you got it shaped like a rock, you paint it to look like a rock. Once you paint it to look like a rock, then you put local vegetation on there, and then you put dirt on it, and then it's nearly impossible to see those things even when you're looking for them. And so you know, to this day, and then obviously we'll talk about that a little later too, but I was up on the turret in our Humvee. We were in the lead vehicle, and the EFP, it hit us hard. And I have the curse and the blessing of remembering everything from blast to getting medevac to the green zone in Baghdad. And, you know, again, I'll try to keep it short, but what happened immediately was catastrophe and chaos. It was, and I don't know how descriptive I can be.
As much as you want.
Is that okay? All right.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how's cursing on your podcast, Chris?
Or satellites, all good.
Sounds good. All right. So inside of the Humvee was a fucking mess, is what I'll say. And it was a mess because my two buddies, Kyle Little and Blake Stevens, were killed instantly. And, you know, out of respect for their families, I won't talk about what their remains look like. That's why I just know it was a fucking mess. And amongst that mess was what looked like used to be 2 legs on me. And it was, you know, one of them kind of looked like spaghetti, you know, with everything else kind of attached still, like the tendon, like the cartilage, like bone. And then the other one, like you could still kind of tell it was a leg. It was just mangled all to shit. And you know, our awesome team, everybody did their jobs that day. Everybody did their jobs well. You know, our team leader, Captain Hemmon, he called in the 9 line immediately. And then my squad leader, Sergeant Mike Henderson, and then, well, actually that's a different topic too. But anyway, my squad leader, Mike Henderson, and our medic, Stephanie McCauley, came right to my aid. They thought everybody in the vehicle was dead. And talk about women in combat, that's Stephanie McCauley. And my life, you know, I say it as much as I can, whenever I can. My life was saved by a woman in combat. And so when people want to have that conversation with me, I'm more than happy to have that, because man, when you see how she performed and what she did, she didn't even skip a beat. So again, that could be its own podcast itself. And so that's what happened immediately. They pulled me out, you know, lots of things in between, you know, obviously Stephanie and Mike both did their jobs just exceeded the standard. They are responsible for getting me off the battlefield, as is the rest of the team. And you know, I thought I was going to die right there. That was my first visit, if you will, to getting a peek at the afterlife. And when when I had that thought, it was, it was kind of fleeting because I lost a lot of blood. I shouldn't have, I honestly shouldn't have been alive medically, and logically, I shouldn't have been alive at that point. I had lost too much blood already. And once they got me out, got me stable, the bird came about 24 minutes later. It was a hot LZ. They got in, and here's one more thing I want to say about Stephanie is she was maybe 120 pounds at the time, and it was her and Mike Henderson. Both of them carried my big ass about 100 meters to the LZ. Just imagine little Stephanie McCulley, and she's not that little, but again, at that time I was about 250 pounds, and given my injuries, the blood I lost, the tissue I lost, I was maybe still about 220. But her and one other dude carried me that far. I mean, I don't know how many ladies are around that can do that, especially on the battlefield. So that's what happened. In full kit.
Yeah.
So that's what happened immediately. And then the days that happened after, I was in an induced coma for about 2 weeks. So I have an idea. I have hallucinations. I have some experiences that I've confirmed and validated in the couple weeks after. But I woke up to my wife at Walter Reed Walter Reed Medical Center in DC. And then from there, then the work started. Then it was like, all right, got no legs. That's new. But damn it, if I didn't have my support system around me, I don't know how it would have played out from then. And so I woke up to my wife. I also woke up to my mom and dad and my brother. So it was like, all right, if I'm here, they're here. That means I'm still here, because along the way, man, I died twice. I flatlined twice. I flatlined once in Baghdad, and I flatlined once in Landstuhl, Germany on the way. So that's kind of a peak of what it was like for immediately a few days after, and then a couple weeks after. And after that, it's just been constant work.
It's a hell of a peak. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I'm not done with it yet.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. That's crazy.
So you talk about the work beginning. After about a year of rehab, you remained on active duty and took on the role of a warrior transition unit squad leader for another 2 years. There, you're helping soldiers, Marines, and sailors with conditions and experiences similar to your own transition out of the military. Must have been rewarding, but it also must have taken a heavy toll on you physically and emotionally, especially as a double amputee with a TBI. Why were you motivated to take on that responsibility, and what was that experience like?
Thanks for asking that, Chris. That's a lot to unpack there, because so let's start with what motivated me. What motivated me was I didn't feel like I was done in the Army yet. It was pretty soon after I enlisted, like very soon after. I was on my first deployment, and I was like, okay, I'm not done yet. And so that was piece number one. Piece number two was doing the rehab and learning to walk again on prosthetics anyway. It was a challenge, to say the least. It's getting used to a new anatomy. It's getting used to a new center of gravity even. And that's something, a lot of people don't really talk about when it comes to amputees, is how important your center of gravity is. And it was, identity was huge. And at that time, the Army pretty much was my identity. And when I thought I wasn't done, this opportunity came up, and, because I was a soldier in the warrior transition unit, going through my care, going through my rehab, all my surgeries, and obviously they didn't stop then. They still continue to this day. But going through all of that myself, I realized, okay, if I'm doing this and I'm doing okay at it, I have a good support system. I have an awesome wife who stayed with me. Man, I want to try to get other dudes and gals to this level. Like, I want to let them know, like, not only is it okay not to be okay, but, with incremental change and incremental effort, like, it's whatever you want to do is possible, and you got to use what you got. And what we had at that time was each other. And so I thought it was a pretty good fit for me to not only go through my own rehab. I was walking okay at the time. And by okay, I mean, the pain was still crazy. Like my fits where my socket fits were still all over the map because my volume change, you know, with most amputees, their volume change doesn't really stop until probably 5 or 6 years after, because your body's trying to figure out what to do with it. And when it comes to, you know, why I wanted to take on that responsibility, it's just that, is because I felt like it was my responsibility. And growing up, and even to this day, it took me a long time to realize, but it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm just a helper. I'm pretty sure I'm just an empath that, man, and believe me when I say this, I wish there are times that I wish I didn't feel what somebody was feeling, like after a tragedy or after like a hard time, or I mean, just name the situation. There are times where I wish I didn't feel what they were feeling, but that's just who I've been. And I can look at, and I could track that back all the way to childhood, where it's like, if a kid was having a tough time or didn't have enough to eat at home, man, I felt that shit. And then the next day I would try to bring them some lunch. So it's like things like that. And then when I'm looking at other amputees or other people who are traumatically wounded and even injured or ill, whatever that looked like, I felt like that was my place. Like that's it might sound too simple, but that's just where I felt like I needed to be, and the opportunity was there. And it being and all of their situations being similar to my own was just a plus, because then I can actually show by example. Like, oh, so going downstairs fucking sucks. I don't ever want to do that. It's scary. I don't want to do that shit. And it's like, okay, cool. You don't have to right now. I'm going to go ahead and trek down these stairs. If you want to try and if you want to learn, I'm here to teach you, man. Like, it's good. And that was just a plus on the side of, on the outside of being a squad leader in the unit itself. Like, then I had all the Army stuff to deal with. We were still soldiers. And that was really cool to let them know, like, dude, you're still a fucking soldier. Don't forget that. I don't care. Like, I care that you're missing 3 limbs, but don't forget, you're still active duty, bro. And you're a fucking tough guy. So let's do this. Like, let's put the work in. So all of that combined, it was, you know, and it did take a heavy toll, because because of all that, it was almost like a distraction from me taking care of my own mental health, which I honestly neglected all the way up until probably 2013. And it was a good distraction. I learned a lot, but then afterwards I was stuck with myself, and I didn't spend any of that time figuring out who I was. So there was a downside, you know, like to everything, there's usually a downside. And that was it for me. Is it took me a long time to try to find my identity, find my purpose, and find who I was.
Well, you've certainly found it now.
Thank you.
Bryce, did the Marine Corps
Can
find
I-
roles? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, can I just comment? So I completely, wholeheartedly, like, you hit it nail on the head, brother. Like military member, veteran to veteran, like, you'll get this. Like, I love you. Like, come here, like, come in for a hug, man. Like, you hit it right on the head. When I was at, you're right. When I was at Wounded Warrior Battalion West, when I was getting medically retired, like, that was the same. I wasn't a squad leader or anything. I was just general population guy getting medically retired. But, like, I told everyone that was there that didn't matter who they were, from the major that was there to the master gunnery sergeant E9 that was there, like, you're still a Marine. It doesn't matter. And I was a staff sergeant at the time. Like, I'm like, you're still a Marine. You still got to make sure you shave. You still got to make sure you're doing everything you need to do in order to comply. Like, this isn't a skate place. You know, like, you don't get to just ease on by. Like, nah, do what you're supposed to do. I remember vividly, we had, I won't say his name, but we had a Lance Corporal that was there who got hurt right after boot camp. Won't go into his details on how, but had a severe TBI. But all this kid wanted to do was get into the Fleet Marine Corps. That's it. It's all he wanted to do. And he wanted to go infantry. And we had infantry guys there, and they would just blow him off. Like, go away, get lost. And it's like, hell no. Like, you're a sergeant, you're a staff sergeant, you're a corporal, you know, do your job, teach this kid, like, train him. He wants to get back in the fleet. He don't want to get retired. He wants to push and try. Do your job and train him now. That way he's fit for service when he gets there. He's already ahead of the peers. But like, man, you hit it on the head. Like, I really appreciate what you did. That's amazing.
Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, bro. Love you.
Well, I always pride, going for the air hug. I love it. I always pride this show on being a show first. And we just have a couple that just occurred here. First of all, Saul, I think you broke the record for the number of F-bombs dropped during my show, which is all good, brother. You both have blown the hell
I
out of
haven't started
my
yet,
Q&A
but
script. Well, I'm coming back to you next, so you got a chance. So, yes, I've got this list of Q&A questions here, and I'll touch on some, but let's talk about what's important to both of you as we go through this conversation, just make it more free form. But before we do that, Saul, we talked about your transition. Bryce, how about you? Your back injury got worse and worse. Did the Marine Corps help find a new role or roles for you as that deteriorated?
no, actually. So after I ended up having the 4-level spinal fusion from L3 to S1, and it was considered a failed fusion. That was due to injuries I sustained while in Iraq, on ship, and in Afghanistan. But the first one was in Iraq, and I dealt with that pain for a long time. I was young, dumb, and full of cum. I mean, that was the way I tell everybody that. So go ahead, laugh, Saul. I see you doing it, bro. It's good. Just let it go. Just let it go. But it fucking sucked. I mean, it was one of those things that it was just like, once the surgery happened and I woke up and I'm like, I'm done. Like, I was in more pain than what I was. There's a 50-50 chance. 50% chance I'd be better, 50% chance I'd be fucking worse. I was fucking worse. It sucked. Woke up to my wife crying. I was crying, and I was like, I'm done. I had at the time, I believe it was I had Colonel Hagen was my I guess you'd call him my OIC, if you will. He was the one that I reported to at that time. He came in, talked to me for a while, and then the general officer at the time for 1st Marine Division came in and talked to me, and I can't remember his name right now. I want to say it was Nicholson, but he came in. He's like, we can still, you can still do some things. There's still things you can do. I started crying in front of the general officer and the colonel, like, no, there's not. Like, I know that I know the limits and inside the military, how it went. Like, if I didn't get promoted to X rank, I couldn't stay in for how long. And then they started changing those time frames. So yeah, I could have stayed in and maybe found a spot like Saul did, but I would have eventually just been let go. So at that point, I had to think about my family, and it was, well, do I continue to do everything I've been doing the last 7 years, 6 years, and pouring my entire heart, soul, and body into the core? Like, that was everything. It took me a lot of years to actually understand that all I did was give everything I had to them, and I actually neglected my family because of that. And I've tried to change those ways and make major changes in my life because of, I realized it. But no, they didn't find me one. And in all reality, once Colonel Hagen left, he's just such a great man, Colonel Robert Hagen. He's phenomenal. He gave me the top block on we call it the Christmas tree on the fitness report. And it was before I picked up Staff Sergeant. He's like the best sergeant I've worked with in 25 years. Promote now. This Marine will change our Corps' future, shape and change our Corps' future. Like, but that was while I was recovering from surgery. Like, he left, we got a new colonel. I won't mention his name, just out of respect for the rank. That's all, not the man. But that colonel didn't like me. All he knew me as, like I said in the beginning, like, Saul, you can call me Bryce, you can call me Cherry, you can call me wheelchair asshole. I don't give a fuck. Like, you can call me the guy that's ugly. It doesn't bother me. I'm all good with it, right? Or you can call me the guy that never quits, right? Like, never quits. It's just, all he saw was broke Cherry, if you will. He didn't know the the other part of me. I still worked the same. I still had the same work ethic. I mean, I had more jobs, more tasks because we lost people due to, you know, them having to go to a different unit or whatnot. But he ended up saying like, nah, like send him to Wounded Warrior Battalion West, let him just get out, which hindsight, right? Like if you look at it from his perspective, he's like, let the Marine focus on just getting out. And I understood it, but no, they didn't give me a chance like they did for you, Saul. However, I did pick up a role, if you will, a what's the right word, verbiage here? It wasn't a legitimate role. It was just a role that I fulfilled by doing the things I just spoke about. Like, no, like the kid wants to stay in, let's teach him. So like I would go over like, you know, small unit leadership tactics with them, right? Like going over squad tactics, going over fire team tactics, everything in between. And I'm not infantry, I'm logistics. So, but they say every Marine's a rifleman. I know a little bit, but I would do that type of stuff. They actually took me from my position that I was doing phenomenally at. But yeah.
Each of you
Which-
volunteered. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, that part really hurt me. Because when I read, you know, a little bit about Saul before this podcast, I was like, man, like I wish that I would have had that chance, because just like how he said it, like I'm an empath. Like I feel everyone's pain. I see it all the time, and I'm one of those ones, and I'm sure just listening to 15-20 minutes of Saul, you know, speaking total, I guess, maybe 30, but like he's the same way. Like we'd give each other or anyone else a shirt off our backs. So I mean I'd offer Saul my legs, but they don't work. So I don't know what the fuck he would do with them. He could just hold on to them, but I mean I think they still work. You got a good spinal cord, you'll be good, man. Just we'll rig it up with some duct tape and some zip ties, some paracord, 550 cord. You know what I mean? Like we're good. Yeah. All right, Chris, sorry.
I can see the people listening to this just cringe a little bit. Like, did I
Well,
laugh?
you know,
Am I allowed to laugh?
No, they can't. You know, you can't make fun of the disabled, so we can't even stand up for ourselves. This is some fucking bullshit. Like, and if they don't laugh, that's something I won't stand for it if they don't laugh. This is crap. I mean, I go into a store, I wheel in there, and they're like, "Can I help you?" And I say, "No, I'm a glorified shopping cart. I got it. Like, I'm good. I'll just put it on my lap." Well, it's heavy. I don't feel it. So
More first were just shattered there with the jokes and yeah, I'm sure my
Sorry,
executive
sorry.
producers are going to call me. No, it puts a little levity to the conversation, so I appreciate that.
yeah,
You know, and I want to touch for both of you here. We've got about, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes left. Bryce, you just mentioned giving Saul the shirt off your back.
Yeah.
Both of you volunteered to serve our nation and defend our freedoms and liberties. Both of you were injured in the line of duty or because of your service, yet you both continue to give back.
right.
You know, especially for you, Bryce, you were just talking about how you got shafted by the system.
Right.
You know, you guys are just wired just to give back. What's in it for you? Like, why do you enjoy it so much?
Because it's our fellow brothers and sisters. That's the reason why, in my opinion. I mean, you see your family, your extended family struggling, and it regardless, I guess, extended family or not, but you see your extended family struggling, and you just want to help. How can I help? What can I do? What's the next thing? How can we go forward? How can I fix this? It's actually it's a medical kind of thing too. From a male perspective, we want control. We want to be able to control it. And so when we see it happening to us ourselves, we neglect ourselves, like Saul said as well, wholeheartedly neglect everything. But like, I'll put everything I have into helping someone else because I feel that's the best way to give back. And I think that's really what the Lord, even though this happened to me, like that's his that's his path he chose now for me, is to do this, to do my best to be an advocate and to help those that truly need it and want the help. So that's my way. I'll let Saul finish it up.
I appreciate you saying that, Bryce. So, man, I mean, there's a lot of things to say there, Chris. And honestly, I think that answer has changed over time. And I think that also signals growth over time. Is like, if you're dead set on something for however long, until, something or someone changes your mind, I think that's growth. But I think if you're closed off to hearing a new perspective or listening to a different perspective, even if it's, what I'm trying to say is, I think now in this point in time, it just feels like my purpose, because it's what I can give, and it's what I have to give, is the knowledge or the experience or the habits, even, or even the disciplines that I've developed over time because of my wounds, and because of the things I've had to do day in and day out because of them. And for a long time, I didn't realize I was doing any of that. For a long time, I didn't realize. That's why I say, people maybe don't realize when they're practicing, they're preparing mentally. And so I didn't realize that all these years. I thought I was putting my legs on every day because I should. I thought I was trying to get better at walking because I should. And then my wife got, and then my son came. And then I was like, okay, I got no choice but to get good at walking now, because I got to be able to keep up with this little guy. And for you, Cherry, it was probably like getting better at, getting mobile and getting in and out of your vehicle and loading up your chair, all those things. And
100%.
so why? So I guess the answer, Chris, is why is just because I feel like I should. It's not doing anybody any good by keeping all of that in here. And I also truly believe, like, giving and kindness and all of those adjectives in that realm, I give them until I can't anymore. And I don't really like that word, I can't, or that phrase. I give and give until I can't. And that's, at some point, the onus has to be put back on the person that you're trying to help, or the group that you're trying to help.
Agreed.
And so for that, I will say, to anyone listening, is everybody can help you as much as they can, but ultimately you have to help yourself as well. And if you're not doing that, eventually those people that are trying to help you thrive, those people that are trying to help support you, eventually they're going to fizzle out. Maybe a few will stick around and touch and go here and there, but man, it starts with you. And so why do I give? Because I just feel like it's who I am, Chris. And I feel like if we made everybody better, the whole world, the country would be better if we were just like lifting everybody up instead of being focused on trying to tear everybody down. Like, haters will hate, that is a fact of life. There's gravity, there's time will never stop moving, gravity will never cease, and haters will always find a way to hate. So
Right.
Brothers, I love you both.
Chris, this is volume 1. We need a volume 2 with me and Saul.
There will be a volume 2, if not 3. We're out of time. Thank you both for being here. Honor and a pleasure. Again, brothers, I love you both. Thanks for the work you continue to do. I'm Chris Meek. We'll see you same time, same place. Until then, keep taking your next steps forward.